It's a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Arab Affairs, our show bringing you all the latest news and events from all around the Arab region. I'm Angie Meher joining you for today's episode of our show, and as usual we go to a short break and we'll be right back to take a look at some of the news making the headlines. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Beginning with our news making the headlines, Egypt has refuted media reports on its readiness to transfer 500,000 residents in Gaza to temporarily live in a city designated for Palestinians in North Sinai as part of the state's reconstruction plan for the war-torn strip. State Information Service affirmed that such allegations and rumors are false, being in a total contradiction with Egypt's initial and firm stance, which it announced since the first days of the Gaza genocide war, on its complete rejection of any attempt to forcibly or voluntarily evacuate fellow Palestinians from their land to another place, particularly to Egypt. It noted that such a displacement represents a liquidation of the Palestinian cause and is a grave danger to Egypt's national security. The SIS noted an Arab-forged plan to launch post-war recovery in Gaza, with Palestinians remaining in their homeland, was based on Egypt's firm and clear stance on the Palestinian evacuation issue, which was unanimously agreed upon during the latest extraordinary Arab summit held in Cairo. The Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheid said that the Arab League was the Arabs' voice along 80 years and was always forward of defending a fair cause that had an Arab consensus without any doubts over decades, which is a Palestinian cause that is currently facing the most dangerous and powerful threat to its liquidation. Abul Gheid pointed that the Arab League was always the organization to which everyone belongs to the Arab civilization and culture and is looking forward to the Arab common future, and always the fence against attempts to change the identity of the Arab region. Ministry of Health in Gaza said Saturday at least 130 Palestinians were killed and 263 wounded in the last 48 hours as a result of the Israeli offensive on Gaza. Israel resumed bombing and ground operations in the Gaza Strip as it presses the Palestinian fighter group Hamas to free remaining Israeli hostages. 2 Palestinians were killed and others wounded in Israeli airstrikes in the northern area and central Gaza Strip. Medical teams this morning recovered 9 bodies, amongst them 5 children and a woman in a bombardment in a neighborhood east of the Strip. Israeli aggression has killed over 49,700 Palestinians, most of them children and women, and over 113,000 wounded, in addition to other people still under the rubble. Meanwhile, Hamas on Saturday accused the United States of distorting the truth by saying that Palestinian militant group had chosen war with Israel by refusing to release hostages. Earlier, Hamas said it was reviewing a U.S. proposal to restore the Gaza ceasefire as Israel intensified a military onslaught to press the Palestinian group to free remaining Israeli hostages. We have the details. Hamas said it was reviewing a U.S. proposal to restore the Gaza ceasefire as Israel intensified a military onslaught to press the Palestinian fighter group to free remaining Israeli hostages. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's bridge plan, presented last week, aims to extend the ceasefire into April, beyond the holidays of Ramadan and Passover, to allow time for negotiations on a permanent cessation of hostilities. 3 days after Israel effectively abandoned the 2-month-old truce, the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said the military was intensifying its air, land and sea strikes and would move civilians into the southern part of Gaza. Katz said Israel would continue its campaign until Hamas released more hostages and was totally defeated. Israeli airstrikes inflicted serious damage on Hamas this week, killing its Gaza government chief and other top officials. But Palestinian and Israeli sources say Hamas has showed it can absorb major losses and still fight and govern. Hamas said it was still debating Witkoff's proposal and other ideas, with the goal of reaching a deal on prisoner releases, ending the war and securing a complete Israeli military withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Palestinian officials speaking on condition of anonymity said Egypt also put forward a bridging proposal, but Hamas has yet to respond. Two Egyptian security sources said Egypt had suggested setting a timeline for the release of the remaining hostages alongside a deadline for a full Israeli pullout from Gaza with U.S. guarantees. The source said the U.S. had signaled initial approval while Hamas and Israel's responses were expected later. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and still with our news, the governments of Germany, France and Britain have called for an immediate return to ceasefire in Gaza in a joint statement. They also called on Israel to restore humanitarian aid access. A joint statement, the three foreign ministers called on Israel to restore humanitarian aid, including water and electricity, and ensure access to medical care and temporary medical evacuations in accordance with international humanitarian law. We have the details.
The foreign ministers of Germany, France and Britain called for an immediate return to a Gaza ceasefire as Israel's military pressed its renewed offensive in the Palestinian territory. Israel on Tuesday began a fresh assault on the war-battered enclave, shattering the relative calm since January 19th ceasefire. The ministers said in a joint statement that the resumption of Israeli strikes in Gaza marks a dramatic step backward for the people of Gaza, adding that they are appalled by the civilian casualties and urgently call for an immediate return to a ceasefire. The joint appeal came after Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz threatened Friday to annex parts of the Gaza Strip if Hamas did not release the remaining Israeli hostages being held there. The ministers, Germany's Annalena Baerbock, France's Jean-Noël Barrot and Britain's David Lammy, called on all parties to re-engage with negotiations to ensure the ceasefire is implemented in full and becomes permanent. They said Hamas must release the dozens of hostages remaining in the Palestinian territory and that the group must neither govern Gaza nor be a threat to Israel anymore. The allies said Israel must fully respect international law and allow the flow of aid into their territory.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for the afternoon, His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. It's a very good afternoon to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir, and thank you very much for your time, Mr. Ambassador. Let me start by asking you, how do you see the current situation on the ground in the Gaza Strip with the escalation by the Israeli occupation force and the strikes that we're seeing on the Gaza Strip?
Very sad situation, but I must confess that I am not surprised, because we have to prepare ourselves for longer and longer situation like that, aggression after aggression. Why? Because there is one gentleman in the decision-making system who benefits from continuing the war, namely the president, the prime minister of Israel. He is requested by the International Court of Justice and the International Court of Crimes. Even he is requested by the legal system in his own country to be tried. So as much as or as long as the war is continuing, he can hide himself from all these problems towards him. Second, that the armament industry is benefiting. They sold armament in the last 14 months by $80 billion, whether in this area or other areas. Third, is a hidden agenda of the President of United States, who is supporting Israel by all means and stopping the international justice to take any decision in the Security Council. So we do not have any weapon except the weapon of resisting and continue resisting, because the long resistance and the very strong stand of the Palestinians in their own land is really very strong, and it makes the Israelis lose a lot of money, a lot of their weapons, and a lot of their fighters. So no agenda I can see, except that we have to expect 10 or 15 years of a continuous aggression all the time in this area.
Mr. Ambassador, now we also seen Hamas on Saturday accusing the U.S. of, distorting the truth by saying that the Hamas have chosen war with Israel by refusing to release the hostages, even though earlier there were reports that Hamas was reviewing a U.S. proposal to restore the Gaza ceasefire as Israel intensifies its military onslaught on Gaza, rather, to insist on the freedom of the Israeli hostages that are remaining. How do you see this development, Your Excellency?
It is good and bad. Sometimes you hear some good news, then it stops, and then you don't know. Also, the agenda of Hamas is hidden. Although we are supporting, of course, our brothers in Palestine and Gaza, including Hamas, but Hamas is a problem to the Arab position. Like Hezbollah in Lebanon, it is making a sort of a state within the state. They do not consult anybody. They ask for our help, but they do not ask for our advice. Although we have direct relation with them, and Egypt is doing its best to have a sort of stopping the shooting and to have a truce. We shall continue this. But Hamas is a problem to us as it is a problem to everybody.
Now, Your Excellency, let's talk a bit about the international community's reactions. The governments of Germany, France and Britain have called for an immediate return to the ceasefire in Gaza in a joint statement, and they've also called on Israel to restore humanitarian aid access, which is critically being distorted at the moment. How important do you see this, and what are your expectations from the international community, especially after such a release by Germany, France and Britain?
This is a small success of the Egyptian and the Arab diplomacy, where we are knocking on all the doors. We made a big success in the United Nations General Assembly, where 154 countries voted for the stopping of the war and establishing a two-state solution. Also, we succeeded with the regional organization, especially the African Union. African Union is granting the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the position of a witness member in the African Union, although it is not an African country, and they deny to Israel to watch their work. Also on the Arab League, of course, the Arab League is highly supporting the Palestinian question. Latin America is maintaining a very good position. Here we succeeded with our partners in the European Union to draw their attention that life like that cannot continue.
Yes.
It will affect also their interest in the area. How we can continue trading with Europe while the Mediterranean is always in a state of war. So that's why the three countries which you mentioned are main members, the strongest members in the EU.
Yes.
And there are others, of course, like Spain, like Greece or Italy. All of them are supporting the Palestinian question. Even I want to draw the attention to the position of Spain, Portugal, and Greece, because the three of them did not recognize Israel until the beginning,
yes,
and until the 70s when they were knocking the door to be members in the European Union. So the supporters of the Palestinian question are increasing, And we hope that this will push the United States to give orders to Israel to stop this silly aggression.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. On that note, I'd like to thank you very, very much, Mr. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you so much, sir, for all your time and your insight, and as well as joining us on today's edition of Arab Affairs. And still moving on to more news. One person was killed and 3 others wounded in an Israeli airstrike on a village in South Lebanon, according to Lebanese state television, that reported Saturday as Israel targets towns in response to a cross-border rocket salvo. We have the details.
Israel struck Lebanon on Saturday in retaliation for rockets targeting Israel, killing 1 person and wounding